Good evening, everyone. It's a good Erev Shabbos here on the Eastern Coast, and it's wonderful to have you joining us for this weekly Parsha Share, of which we give tremendous thanks to TorahAnytime.com for hosting us, and to Chazak for publicizing us, and for you for joining us. And we open up the shir reminding you about the great tzedakah, dailygiving.org. You know, you don't have a chance really to research where should I give my dollar every day. You know, they do the research for you with such experts as Rabbi Krohn and Rabbi Leaf and a whole team. And they give to places like Project Inspire, NCSY, A Time, OL, Magen David Adom, Crib, the most wonderful organizations, and all you have to do is swipe your credit card. They'll give $1 a day. You have the great knowledge of knowing that every day you're investing in a world-class tzedakah. And the benefit is that people are doing it all over the world, and the cumulative effect has dailygiving.org already participating in giving over $1 million a year. So to go to dailygiving.org and join this wonderful tzedakah. Today's shir is being sponsored by the Fenster, Schuler, and Ambush families, and it's being done Le'ilui Nishmas Esther Bas Aryeh Adov for her yahrzeit. Her neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden, and she should be a Mlitzis Yosher for her family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. She's a seventh generation Yerushalmi, descended from Rav Avram Shrag and from Rav Wallenstein. A teacher par excellent and a tremendous balas chesed. Her neshama should have a great aliyah, and we thank the families for sponsoring the share. It's also sponsored by Scott Andrew, with the hope that Chaya Bas Adina should have a baby, and Simcha Ben Adina to find his Basherta, and the Refuah Shalema for Katriel Ben Chaya Rachel Chana. They should have a Refuah Shalema B'Ser Shachar Yisrael. All of us also want to dedicate our learning the Refuah Shalema for the Pesach Adar here in America, Rav David Feinstein, who needs a Refuah Shalema. So let us learn and daven for Rav David Ben Rebbetzin Sima that he should have a Refuah Shalema B'Ser Shachar Yisrael. Shlach Lecha Anoshim V'Yasuru Es Eretz Canaan. Send for yourself out people, and let them spy the land of Canaan. Now, obviously, there's a question that begs to be understood. Hashem says, I'm going to give you the land. You send out spies if you're not sure if your mission will succeed. But Hashem says, I'm going to give you the land. That's, signed, sealed, and delivered. It's done. You don't have to send out spies for a mission that's divinely ordained and promised. So why send out spies? So the Yalkut handles this question by saying that the Bnei Yisrael were told that when they come into the land, they would be given Batim Maleim Kol Tov, houses filled with everything. Now, they knew that the Canaanites sensed they were coming, and they told Moshe Rabbeinu the Canaanites are going to hide everything because they know the Jews are coming. And therefore they said we should go and find where they hide stuff. So that way Hashem's words would be fulfilled. And this idea that it was for a Kiddush Hashem found favor in the eyes of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the way the Yalkut seems to learn. The Reb Chaim Kanievsky quotes from Rus Rabbah a rule. In Rus Rabbah, it says that Hashem only does miracles when it's necessary. When things can be done b'derech hateva, Hashem prefers to do things in a natural way because He made a world. That's the idea of Ein Kol Chodesh Tachas Hashemesh. Nothing is new under the sun, because the world was made perfect. So if the Rebbeinu Shalom can do things b'derech hateva, He likes to do them. That's why there was on top of the Beis Hamikdash kalya oirev, spikes to chase away the raven shouldn't land on the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the Beis Hamikdash could have had a no-fly zone, a miraculous no-fly zone. Anything that flew over the head of Yonis ben Uziel was burnt. Or it says that we just learned in the Daf Yomi and Shabbos that if the worms made a hole in the krushim, so they used to fill it up with lead. Now Hashem could have made that no worms should come, just like He made that there was no zvuv beis hamikdash. But the Rebbeinu Shalom likes to do things b'derech hateva. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu felt as follows. He's going to send out spies. If they come back and say that the land is conquerable, it's doable, so then he knew that he would have to do normal warfare, and he would have to prepare troops and arm them and get strategists to figure out a military campaign and to do things b'derech hateva. If, however, they would go to the land and see that it was just, forget about it, al pi derech hateva, it's not possible, so then he would know that their job is only to trust in Hashem, and Hashem would lead the way. Indeed, the latter was true. I mean, we were in their eyes like grasshoppers. There was no way that we would be able to win a conventional war. And indeed, the Rebbeinu Shalom just sent the tzira, the miraculous hornet or whatever it was, and it blinded them and it castrated them, and the walls of Yericho came tumbling down on its own, right? So it was all miraculous. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu sent them, to know what the approach should be. The only problem is that the Meraglim scared the people. And that's where the plan went afoul, that the people cried a bechia shel chinam, a cry for nothing. That's why Yeshua learned from this, and when Yeshua would later send out spies, he made sure that it should be cheresh, secretly. They shouldn't give a public report. It's very important to learn from mistakes. We're going to talk about that right now. It says, Lama nismecha parshas meraglim leMiriam. Why is the parsha of the meraglim put in close juxtaposition to what we learned about Miriam in last week's parsha, that she was punished with leprosy because she spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu, that he wasn't with his wife Tzipora. So what's the connection? So Rashi says, and this is a fundamental for life. Rashi says, Risham alalu ro v'loy laku muser. These wicked people saw what happened, and they didn't learn the lesson. They saw what happened to Miriam when you talk bad, and here they talked bad about the land, so they were called Risham halalu. These wicked people ro v'loy laku muser. A person has to learn from what goes around them. As it says, Ramila would always quote the pasuk in Mishnah, Leitz take upesi yarim. The scoffer is smitten, and the fool, in other words, a person that doesn't know the truth, he becomes clever. You watch what happens to other people, and you learn a lesson not to repeat the mistakes. So Rabbi Isai, if there was ever a time that this should be true, it's during the corona pandemic. Are we learning from what's going on around us? We've seen, everybody knows, of completely healthy people that are not here with us anymore. They succumbed, they caught it on Purim, or a little bit after Purim. They found themselves in the hospital, and of course in the first few weeks the hospital was a nightmare, and they succumbed. One day where they were completely healthy, a few weeks later they were gone. And every community has these horror stories. Everybody knows many families have been affected by it. So what do we have to learn from this? And that's what it says in the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos, La'olam yavakesh adam shelo yechaleh. A person should always pray not to become sick. So you say, what do you mean? I'm completely healthy. That's not something that I have to pray about. I mean, I'm not hypochondriac. I mean, I'm not supposed to think of it. No, the Gemara says, La'olam yavakesh adam shelo yechaleh. How many people are there? They're perfectly healthy, and then one day they feel something. They go to the doctor, and it's cancer, Rahman al-Litzlan, or it's leukemia, Rahman al-Litzlan. So one of the things that we have to learn from this is the meaning of Lakhu Musar. It's very loud, and if I can have a drink. I'm hearing it through the thing. The Risham, the wicked, didn't take Musar. They didn't learn from the lesson. Here's another example. We see people who had very successful businesses. I'm talking about people that didn't have one store, that had a chain of stores. Say they had a chain of suit stores. And then for 3 months, they had no Pesach season. They had inventory that wasn't paid for. They had to pay rent on their stores. They had workers. And they didn't have business for 3 months. They were wiped out. Restaurants. Before Pesach, you know what a season, you know how many restaurants count on the season before Pesach when everybody is busy and therefore they don't have time to make food, so everybody eats out in restaurants. The whole season was wiped out. So what? Thank you. So what do we learn from this? I made a bracha already, Rabbi say. The first thing we learn from it is to daven in Baruch Aleinu. Uvarach she'aseinu kashanim hatayvos. Bless our years like the good years. Don't take it for granted. Another thing that a person has to realize is it's not koichi v'yotzim yodi. It's not my koyach and my strength. If the Rebbeinu Shalom wants, in a minute the whole thing could disappear. I know people that Rav Mamish had solid businesses. You know what happened to dentists? Dentists, Mamish, 3 months they didn't have any business. There's a dentist, they have hygienists, they have workers, they have staff, they have to pay for machinery, they have leases. Boom. It's frightening. Baruch Aleinu Hashem Elokeinu, es hashana ha'tova. It's Hashana this year, l'tova. Right? We ask Hashem to give us svuasa. That's the yield that we bring in, not just crap, but what we bring in, our yield. It should be good, but we have to not take things for granted, because otherwise, Hashem said, look, you saw it by other people, v'lo lakhu musar, and you didn't learn to be better. Person, the Chavetz Chaim tells us that when you bench, if you bench slowly with kavana, muftach lo yishayehei parnasa berevach uvechavod kol yamav. You can be confident that you'll have parnasa, livelihood, berevach, with comfort and dignity all your days. This is a time where you have to work on benching with kavana. We see what how much people were wiped out. You're going to have to start all over again. And incidentally, about the learning of Musar. You know what the Chavetz Chaim in the Mishnah Berurah, in the very first Siman Aleph, and in the Shar Tzion, the Mishnah writes, and it's such a powerful thing. The Mishnah Berurah writes that Limud HaMusar Koydem L'Shir Mishnayos. The learning of Musar even comes before learning Mishnayos. Now, if you look at the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that if you are up to say Tikkun Chatzos, then you should learn. And he says Shir Mishnayos Koydem L'Kol Davar, because Mishnah is Oisius Neshama and it's good for the soul. But the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim says, but Musar comes first, because you have to know Reishis Chochma Yiras Hashem. And everybody needs Musar. Yeah, everybody has to learn Musar, because you see, we see the world with our negias. We know that if, you can't judge if you have any personal bias, right? You're a negeh b'davar. When it comes to things that are good for us, we have negias. And therefore, many of the ways that we live are not because it's true, but it's because we are personally involved. Pleasure is at stake. Our reputation is at stake. Right? Our good name is there's a lot of things that are at stake. So therefore, learning Musar keeps us honest. Very important to learn Musar for an acceptable life. Shlach lecha anoshim. It's very interesting. The Klayakis says an interesting thing. If it would be me, Hashem says, I would have sent women. The women didn't sin in the Egel, they didn't sin in the Meraglim, they loved the land. If I would have, you sent men. It's a natural thing, a dangerous mission to send men. It's treacherous terrain, it's dangerous, you send men. But if it would have been me, I would have sent women. The famous word that the Be'er Hasada says is Shlach lecha anoshim, that the Meraglim are for your benefit, Moshe Rabbeinu. Because if it wouldn't have been for the Meraglim, we would have gone into the land right away, and you were slated not to go into the land because you said Lama Harayoysa, Lama Hazeh, besides hitting the rock, and therefore you would have had to die now. But because of the Meraglim, they stayed in the desert 40 years, and you got to live another 40 years till 120. So Shlach lecha anoshim, it's a benefit from you. There's always different angles to look at things. When seminary girls came to Rebbetzin Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha Zchusu Yogan Aleinu, she used to tell them a word that the Stipler Gain, her father-in-law, the Stipler, Zecher Tzadik Zchusu Yogan Aleinu, used to say. It says, L'mata Menashe, it says, L'mata Yosef, L'mata Menashe, Godi Ben Susi. So Rebbetzin Kanievsky said like this, in the name of her father-in-law. You came down, Lamata, you came down to this world, Yosef, to add. Mitzvahs Maisim Tovim. You came down to this world to do something, to add. But Lamata Menashe, you came down and you quickly forgot. Menashe means kinashani, it means to forget. Inche udinche, it means to forget. Godi. So I tell you, Ben Susi, do you think you're a horse? Now this is a very important lesson. We have to remember that we came down to this world to make improvements. Imagine somebody's going to go to the next world and say, Rabbi Shalom, it's coming to me. Yeah, kept Shabbos. Yeah, kept Shabbos. Yeah, put on tefillin. Tzitzis too. Rabbi Shalom says, let me ask you something. I put you not in Hawaii. You weren't born in Kansas. You were born in Borough Park, in Muncie. You want to take credit for not being Mechal Shabbos? For not eating treif? What should you do? I want to know, Yosef, what did you add? What did you improve with the raw materials that I gave you? That's what we have to do in life. Oh, you worked on yourself. It wasn't natural for you to give tzedakah, but you worked in yourself to give. You took that, you took that extra push and you swiped the card for dailygiving.org. Oh yeah, you put a little pushka in your talis bag and you made sure ani b'tzedek echad zapanecha. Oh, yeah, I see you're preparing extra for Shabbos. Yeah, you know. You don't need to, but you know what? I want to do something extra. That's Lamata. We were sent down Yosef. The problem is the Yetzirah. Yetzirah tries to distract us. Lamata, we come down Menashe. We forget. So Gadi, we remembered Ben Susi. You're just like a horse. Just like a horse that is there to enjoy life. Very important reminder. Vayikra Moshe Loisheya ben Nun Yoshua. Moshe called Hoshea ben Nun Yoshua. So there's a Targum Yonasim ben Uziel. The Targum Yonasim ben Uziel says that Kishera Moshe Anava, when Moshe saw that Yoshua was humble, he added a yud to his name. So what's the meaning of this Targum Yonasim ben Uziel? So, I think the very simple pshat is that the yud is the smallest letter in the Torah. That's the Gemara Menachos. It says, Ki bika Hashem tzurei lamim, with the yud and the hey, Hashem created the two worlds. And the Gemara says he created with the yud olam haba. And the Gemara says, why did he create olam haba with a yud? Because it's the smallest letter. And very few people get to olam haba. Scary Gemara. You know, it says that Rabbi Broka Chuzah, it's Gemara in Tanis, saw Eliyahu Hanavi in the great Shukah de left, in the great mall of left. There was a huge mall, you know, like the Woodbridge Mall, right? The big malls. And he asked him, is there anybody here that's a Ben Olam Haba? And it was teeming with people, perhaps thousands of people. And he said, no one. Not easy to get to Olam Haba. So it's a yud because it's the smallest letter. By the way, it's also yud because it doesn't touch the ground. The yud is the only letter in the aleph base that doesn't touch the land, because it's not this world, it's the next world. And also the yud means the future. Oz shaloi nemer ela oz yoshir. Right? It's the future, I will sing. Yud is the future. Also yud is what makes something in grammar mine. Bayis' house, Beisi is my house. Shulchan is a table. Shulchani is my table. What's really mine is what I put away for the next world. All the money I have in the bank, that's only for 120 years. But what I give to the poor, that's mine forever. Famous story, a Rebbe walking with his son, and he had 3 bilkelach, and he gave one to a poor man. So he asked his son, how many bilkelach do we have? So the son said 2. He said, no, 1. The other 2 is going to end up in our stomach, and then in the bathroom. But the one that we gave away, that's ours forever. That's why Yud makes something mine. Because what we give away, that's ours forever. That's the true kiyum. V'yikuli truma. What I give away is mine. So therefore, I would say the simple pshat in this Targum Yonasim ben Uziel is that Moshe Rabbeinu was looking for a letter to add to Yeshua, to Hoshea. So he saw that he was a humble, so he added a yud. Of course, it stands for Koy Hoshiacha Me'atzas Meraglim. Hashem should save him from the hates of the Meraglim. That's true also. But the yud is the smallest letter, and therefore, since Yeshua was humble, he graced him. Of course, he took the yud also from Sarai, right? Because when Sarai's name was changed to Sarah, so therefore that yud was available, so he used that yud. Another pshat that I thought is that he used the yud because he saw that he was humble. When somebody is humble, that person gets Hashem. Where was Hashem Shayr His Shechina? on the sneh, on the lowly bush. On Sinai, the lowly mountain, not Har Carmel, not the mighty, majestic ones, the humble ones. That's what we said last week from Rav Leibel Katz's Sefer Oyel Aryeh, right? It says, "Vayish Moshe Anav Mi'od Mikol Adam Seif Tevis B'Gematria Shechina," because the Shechina is Shaira on humility. It says, "Ekev Anova Yiras Hashem." Besides Anova, there's Yiras Hashem. It puts Anova and Yiras Hashem on the same footing. It's a Taisus in the 12th parak of Mitzvahs Chalitza says in Yevamis, "Melamed sheshkulim hein." It's an amazing thing. Anova, humility. So when there's humility, so you're deserving of the Shechina. It's the teferis of the midas, and that's why he says the time Yonis ben Azil says he added a yud, because now with the yud and the hey it becomes ka. Because when you zeichet to the Shechina with Anov. But there's another beautiful pshat said, and it's this is a rather famous pshat. Many people might have heard this pshat already. It's from Rav Yeshua Herschel of Apt. Rav Yeshua Herschel of Apt says that there's a bit that says that at Tchias HaMeisim people will be resurrected alphabetically. So therefore, normally Moshe Rabbeinu would have been reluctant to change the name from Hosea to Yeshua, because he's postponing his Tchias HaMeisim, because the Hey would be earlier than the Yud. But when he saw that he was humble, the Mabit says the humble ones get up first. So when he saw that he was humble, the Tag Yonis ben Azil says he saw that he could add the Yud. The Frierdiker Kiskolyer Rebbe, Rav Moshe was very close with the Frierdiker Kiskolyer Rebbe and held of him immensely. So did Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, so did all of his peers. So he had a custom that by Shalashudas, people would pick a pasuk, and he would think a few moments, and then say a whole drasha with all kinds of explanations and gematrias on that pasuk. They say Rabbi Yaakov used to come sometimes by Shalashudas, and he would pick a pasuk that doesn't sound like you could say anything with it. He would pick a pasuk lamata done. So to understand what this means and to appreciate it, on the pasuk Vayomer Aleihem, he told them, Alu Zeh Banegev, go up in the south. So in the Hakdama of the Sefer Sifra Ditzniusa, in the preface to the Sefer Sifra Ditzniusa, they write that the Gaon, on the first day of Pesach, looked very serious. And this was not his usually demeanor on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, he usually was full of great joy. Famous word from the Gaon, that what's the hardest mitzvah in the Torah to fulfill? It's Vayisach Sameach, to be only happy on the 7 days of Sukkot. So he was, usually the Gaon was suffused with happiness and radiated joy on Yom Tov. And he looked rather serious. And they asked him, and he didn't answer right away, but they pressed him. So he said, you're asking me, I have to fulfill what it says, Daga b'levish, yasichen alacherim, worry in your heart, you should tell it to others. He says, I fell asleep. And Rav Moshe Sternbach writes in a letter that it must be that Techtefen Shina, because the person doesn't go to sleep on Pesach by night, he's snatched by sleep, right? So it must have been he was Isaac in Tzias Mitzrayim, and he fell asleep very late in the night. Whatever, the guy didn't sleep much anyway, 2 hours, but whatever it was, he fell asleep, and he said he was visited by Eliyahu Hanavi. Now, Alu Zeh Banegev, it doesn't sound like really Feta Pasuk, right? He said Eliyahu Hanavi revealed him 2,260 pshatim in this pasuk, 2,260 explanations in this pasuk, and one of them is the secrets of each limb in the body. And he said when he woke up, he was thinking about it before Birchas HaTorah. And it's the Gaon's opinion that you're not allowed to think Torah you're not even think Torah before Birchas HaTorah, and he forgot it. So that's why he was feeling sad. Later on, he said that it was restored to him. But we see when we say that there's so much in the Torah, it says the Torah is nidreshes b'shivim panim on 4 levels, Pardes, Pshat, Rebbe's, Drush inside, and that's just the beginning. Ain't chekelis when I say, yeah, I have a pasuk that you read through, it's 2,260 secrets. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing, showing, I made a bracha, showing what's in the Torah. It's not like people look at the Torah like another book. Not another book. Eretz oicheles yoishvehi. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. That's what the Meraglim said. The Meraglim said wherever they went, they saw funerals. It sounds like during the time of COVID. My mechutin lost his mother during the COVID. She passed away on Thursday. They wanted to bury her on Friday, and the cemetery said, we're sorry, we already have 25 burials, we can't do a 26th one. It's frightening. So they came to Eretz Yisrael, and all over they saw, in every block they saw a funeral. So he said it's a deadly land. Eretz Eicheles Yoshvei. Now they completely misinterpreted what happened. Completely. Truth of the matter is, the Rabban Shalom did that so they should be distracted that the Meraglim should be able to have safe passage. It was really done for them, but they looked at it, instead of looking at it in the positive, they looked at it in the negative. And again, this is something with which I think during the corona crisis is something, if we open our eyes, we could look at things very negatively. Oh, I was stuck in the house 14 weeks. I didn't go outside. I haven't been in a store. I haven't been in a restaurant. I haven't been in a park 14 weeks. What kind of a life is it? Truth of the matter is that if a person opens their eyes, they'll see how many benefits came from this drill that the Rabbi Shalom gave to us. How many fathers, for the first time in their life, became really active in their children's lives? Many fathers, the kids were home from school. They didn't have work, but the women still worked on their computer, on their phone, and they became Mr. Dad or Rabbi Dad. And all of a sudden, they got involved in their children's life, and they saw what they were missing. They say, but the best presents you could give to your children is more of your presence. There are many fathers that learned this. I'll give you another example. It's the first time in certain people's married lives that they made a Pesach. There were no Pesach hotels. And they made a Pesach. And they had to, for the first time, they really had to read Rabbi Blumenkranz's book and say, well, let me see, how do you cash it? It's not only that, they were afraid to bring in a gaita. They did it themselves. They got down and got their hands dirty, and they did it themselves. And they actually prepared a Pesach. And they learned that they could do it. I'll give you another example. How many years did people take for granted being by their parents? Or having their married children, or giving a hug to a grandchild. Many people have still not hugged their grandchild because of the fear. All of a sudden we're appreciating this more. Yet other people, for the first time, In shul, they never had a chance to daven slowly. They always had to run out to business. They were in the house. They weren't going to shul even on Shabbos. They were able to sit by the table with an art scroll sitter and actually look in and see what the words mean. So there's a silver lining that we have to train ourselves to realize. Vayitnu es kolam, they raised their voice, vayifku ha'am balaylahu. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky asks, what's the S? Vayitnu es kolam. So he quotes a Zohar. It says in the Zohar, Al kain lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael es gid anosha. So the Zohar says that one who eats, God forbid, on Tisha B'Av, it's as if he ate the gid anosha. If he did the big crime of eating the sinew of the thigh bone. And S is Aleph Tav, it's Tisha Av. That's S. That's why it says Al Kain Lo Yoichlu B'nei Yisrael Es Gid Anasha. So the Tav Aleph stands for Tisha Av, the 9th of Av. And says Rav Chaim, that's why it says over here Vayitnu Es Kailam Vayifka Malayla, because that night that they cried a Bechia Shel Chinam was Tisha Av. That's what it says. Because we cried a Bechia Shel Chinam, we cried for nothing. What are you afraid of? Hashem promised you the land. Therefore, they would cry a Bechia L'Dairis, which is Tisha B'Av. It's Ramarumas. With the S, it's Tisha B'Av. Vayimatzu ish mekaytzish eitzim b'yom HaShabbos. They found a man being mekaytzish eitzim on Yom HaShabbos. They gave him Asra. He did it anyway, and they would execute him. The Gemara tells us in Shabbos, we also learned it recently in the Daf Yomi, that it's not clear what mekaytzish means, if it means chopping wood, if it means gathering wood, if it means carried wood, but he did one of the malachas of Shabbos. So Rashi says, Lama nismacha, the mekayshish to the parts of tzitzis. Why was the mekayshish put next to the parsha of tzitzis? So Rashi tells us, because Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, you gave us tefillin to remind us. Remember, they wore tefillin the whole day to remind us to keep the mitzvahs. But tefillin we don't have on Shabbos. If we had it on Shabbos, then we would remember not to be Mechalel Shabbos. So the Hashem agreed and gave them tzitzis, which is even on Shabbos. So obviously there's an obvious kasha. Obvious kasha on this Rashi is that the Mekayshish didn't forget. The Mekayshish was executed. He did it deliberately. What would have helped if he wore tefillin? So Reb Chaim answers that the Targum Yonis Menuzil says that Slavchad l'shem shemayim niskavna. Slavchad was mechaven l'shem shemayim. He saw people being Mechal Shabbos. So he said, if I'll be Mechal Shabbos and I'll be executed, it'll put the fear of God in them and they won't be so lackadaisical about Shabbos. So it says that Slavchad was Mechaven L'Shem Shemayim. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Slavchad's act wouldn't have been necessary if they would have a reminder. It was so lackadaisical because they didn't wear tefillin on Shabbos. So Hashem agreed and gave tzitzis. And by the way, speaking about Slavchad, there's a fascinating Chassam Sofer that cites, there's a Gemara that tells us that Ma'aseh b'chassid echad, it's a Gemara we're going to learn in Daf Yomi soon, it's on Daf Kuf Nun, I want to welcome all those that are listening also on Kol Haloshen and watching on Facebook. Gemara tells us, Ma'aseh b'chassid echad. Now, there's a tradition that when it says a chassid echad, it's either Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava or Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Eloi, both great, venerable, saintly people. The Arizal tells us that it's either Arizal or the Chidah, that in this case the chassid echad was Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Eloi. And it says that he was walking around and he noticed that there was a breach in the fence of his field. And almost by reflex, he thought, I got to repair it. And then he recoiled in horror that he thought to do something on Shabbos. Now, even though we said, Hirhurim mutarim, we sing it in my Yedidus, Hirhurim mutarim, but it's a midas chasidus not to even think about on Shabbos. So since he thought about it, he made up his mind that he'll never repair the breach. And what happened? The Gemara says, a tzlaf chad, a caper bush, miraculously grew in the breach. It's miraculous because he didn't plant it there. It miraculously grew. Now, the tzlaf, the caper bush, is a wonder bush, the Talmudic wonder bush, because everything in the tzlaf is edible. The kafrisin, the avyainais, the leaves, the shoots, the berries, the husks, they're all edible. And it says that he got his parnasa from that. You see, extra effort in Shmiras Shabbos promises us, nachala b'li mitzarim. It promises amazing reward. You have to know that that's the way Shabbos works. Anything that you do for Shabbos, you get paid back at least double. Ashrei kol choicha l'soshlu meicha hefel. And for Shabbos, you get back double. That's why in the misper cotton of Shabbos, shin is 3. Misper cotton is without the zeros. Shin is 3, and beis and suf is 6. Right? Because in the name is built in the double payment of Shabbos. But it's also nachala b'li mitzarim. But the Ben Ish Chai adds something amazing. He says that Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eloi was a Gilgal of the Mekaishish. And that's why it says, some say the Mekaishish was Slavchad. So that's why it says Slavchad. One caper bush. Slavchad is Slavchad. The Chassam Sofer says it's a Peladik Pshat. We know that nowadays, credible archaeological digs have seemed to point strongly to a certain type of tchelis. So they asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky about wearing tchelis. I mean, the person really wants to up their mitzvah. No one wants to do that more than Reb Chaim. It's interesting, I saw a thought. They asked Reb Chaim, is there an inyan to use wool that the mitzvah of Reishis Hagez was done on? We don't have that in Chutz La'aretz, but there's a mitzvah that if you have 5 sheep with a certain amount of wool, so you have to give the Reishis Hagez, the first of the fleece, to the kohen. So he says, is there an inyan to use wool for tzitzis from that which is Reishis Hagez was done? Because it says, for example, it says you should use by Shalashudas, you use the bread of your Eruve Chatzeris. Because Kevin David Bar Mitzvah Chada, Yavid Bar Mitzvah Achrita. So Rav Chaim says, yeah, there is an inyan. You don't have to look for it, but if you have it, it is an inyan. Rav Chaim is the first to look for extra mitzvahs. So could you wear the tchelis? Anyway, even if it's not tchelis, you yaitze because it's lavan. So Rav Chaim said, we don't wear tchelis because there's a medrash. See, this B'kiyas of Rav Chaim, there's a medrash Tanchuma that the tchelis is hidden from us. Also, you should know that the Arizal, Yotzar Plois, brings down this Arizal. The Arizal says that after the Churban was Nisbatla tchelis. For now, tchelis was Nisbatla. Why? Because the Big Day Kahuna had tchelis, and parts of the other parts had tchelis, and since it's missing in the Mishkan, it's not proper that the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't have it, and we should have it. So therefore, the Arizal says there's no tchelis now. It's Hashem, Mashiach is going to come. We're going to have tchelis again, but there isn't now. Of course, not everybody holds this way. Obviously, there was a Ratziner tchelis, and the followers of the great Ratziner had tchelis. I'm not saying this to cast aspersions on those that wear it. There are a hush of people that wear it. But I'm just saying, you see that the Sar HaTorah and you see Arizal, that's why a lot of people, even though I'll be honest with you, there was a time that I was severely tempted. I did wear it for a short amount. I was so impressed by the archaeological discoveries. But my Rebbe also, Reb Ruvain, told me not to wear it. But so I'm just giving you some information. I also like to point out, I told you that recently I was given the opportunity, we're still ironing out the details, but I was given the opportunity to say Shir on Chayk. The first 3 shiurim are available on TorahAnytime.com, on Kol HaLashon, the amazing 8 disciplines a day of Chayk. So 6 were created by the Arizal, and then the final 2, Halacha and Musar, was added by the Chidah. So in the Halacha of the very first day of Chayk in Bereshis, the very first day, so the Halacha section, it's the way it works is it's first Chumash and Rashi and Targum, then Novi, then Ksuvim, then a whole parak of Mishnayos, and then a piece of Gemara, and then a piece of Zohar, then Halacha, and then Musar. It's incredible. It's incredible. So in the first day of the Chayk, in the Halacha added by the Chidah, he says, Toiv listakel b'tzitzis. It's good to look at the tzitzis. And you have to know, it says, we say it in Kriya Shema, Uri'isem oisai. Now the famous, the Smak, in the Sefer Mitzvahs, the Rashbatz says that it's a mitzvah to look at tzitzis. It's one in a million mitzvahs to look at tzitzis. But you have to know that there are tremendous benefits to gaze at tzitzis. They say that it's important to people sit at the menorah and gaze at the menorah, and in the neiros is the aragonas, and it's a very, very good. But let me just read you. The Kaf HaChaim writes as follows. Kaf HaChaim says, Ha'astaklis b'tzitzis, he toyeles gadol l'neshama. It's a tremendous aid to neshama. Shalo yizdamen chet liyadai. It gives you an edge that sin shouldn't come to you. That's a big edge. A lot of times a person is caught off guard. Someone on sneer sticker passes by. Someone comes with a juicy bit of gossip. Someone says something nice, and you're tempted to respond in kind, or you're tempted to say it over that you were hurt and to tell somebody else what the person said, right? So a person that looks at the tzitzis, there's a special koyach. This is a koyach. So the gift, we have to know, tzitzis is a gift. Hashem gave us a gift of tzitzis, not a burden. It's hot outside afterwards. It's a gift. So the Kaf HaChaim says when we look at the tzitzis, it's a koyach gadol l'neshama shali yizdamen chet liyadai. And he adds, v'chein skula li'notzel mikas. Now that's a biggie. Here's a person, he's a little hot under the collar, especially Erev Shabbos, or he comes on Monday night at the new part of the week, and he's stressed out. Or a housewife, a housewife could look at her husband's tzitzis and be saved from kas. Now the Chavetz Chaim in the Shmiras HaLashon, at the end of the Sefer, Chelik Beis, says as follows: B're'iyas hatzitzis yesh skula lidchais. There's a koyach in tzitzis to push away machshavas rois. There are people that they can't help it. They're traveling on the train. They're traveling on the bus and they see things. So tzitzis helps to push away machshavas rois v'kas and ulis gaber ala yetzer, and to prevail over the yetzer. So here we have Hashem gave us tzitzis, and we take it for granted that the tzitzis are flapping around. Yeah, it's hot, it's uncomfortable. We have to make sure that it doesn't look sloppy. Tzitzis. And here we see that it helps the neshama to stay away from sin. It helps a person control kas. Mamish, it helps, gives a koyach. The Chofetz Chaim says it gives a person a koyach to prevail over the yetzer. And by the way, the fact that I know this Kaf HaChaim is thanks to Chayk. You know, when you do a discipline, that you learn 8 different things a day, it really adds your knowledge. It's a cumulative addition. It's an amazing limud. Now there's a Peladik Rashi, one of the more Peladik Rashis in the entire Torah. So much so that I believe there's a Sam Sefer that changes the girsa. A famous joke that somebody goes up to Shemayim and he meets the Rambam and he says, "Oh, Rambam, please, I have this Shver Rambam. I didn't understand it. Can you explain it to me?" And the Rambam says, "Oh, that's a wrong girsa." And the person turns to him and says, "That's the way you forever a Rambam?" If it's a wrong girsa, it's a wrong girsa. But Rashi says that there are shmoyne chutin, 8 threads in the tzitzis, to remind us of the 8 days from when we left Egypt to when we crossed the Yam Suf. That's what Rashi says. It's a pella. It's only 7 days from when we left Egypt to the Yam Suf. That's why on Shvi Shel Pesach we celebrate Kriyas Yam Suf. We have an 8th day here in Chutz La'aretz, but it's regular Shvi Shel Pesach. It's only 7 days between Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yam Suf. So what does Rashi say? That there's 8 tzitzis for the 8 days. This Rashi, everybody looks at this Rashi and says, "What?" Nobody understands this Rashi. So the great Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mebels, Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mebels, Zeichet Tzad V'Kodesh Brachas Chusa Yagan Aleinu. Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mebels says 2 pshatim in this Rashi, not 1 but 2 gorgeous pshatim. Doesn't need my askama. The first pshat he says is that we know that on the night when they were going to eat the Korban Pesach, so they couldn't eat it because they weren't circumcised. The Jews sinned in Egypt. Kishemeis Yosef Eiferu Bris Milah. They annulled the Bris Milah. Amru Nia Kimitzriyim. They said, "Let us be like the Egyptians." And an oral can't eat the Korban Pesach. It says Hashem brought a wind and they spelled the roasting of the Korban Pesach, and they went ahead and they mauled themselves. They had such a desire, so they went ahead and they were mauled. But how did they maul themselves? It was night. So it says in the Zayir, Laila Kiyom Yor, that night became day. It became day so that they could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Milah. And by the way, the Per Aaron Hashem Yim Kam Damai says that's another pshat in Manishtana Halayla Hazeh Mikol Halaylos. Manishtana, how different was this night from all the other nights? It wasn't night, it was day outside. That's why we find an unusual thing. Usually the mitzvahs are day-based. But on the night of Pesach, all the mitzvahs are night-based. You have to eat the matzah be'erev teichel matzah. You have to eat the maror in the night. You have to do aseiv in the night. You have to do abakais in the night because that night was like day. Laila kiyom yor. Oh, says Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mebels said it was an extra day because that night counted as a day. Then there was the night, and the next day is already the second day. That's how there's 8 days. That's Rabbi Yisachar Dov's first pshat in Rashi. Says another pshat. It's an amazing Targum Yonis Ben Uziel. Targum Yonis Ben Uziel says, "V'esa eschem al kanfei nesharim," that Hashem took the Jews by the wings of an eagle, and he brought them to Eretz Yisrael, and they shechted the Korban Pesach in Eretz Yisrael, and then he brought them back to Mitzrayim. It's a Targum Yonis Ben Azil. And according to this amazing Targum Yonis Ben Azil, Taka Moshe Rabbeinu did enter Eretz Yisrael, at least on that night. And the Dar of Egypt did get a chance to taste Eretz Yisrael. But says the Rabbi Sachadaiv Mibels, that according to this, that was the first day when they went to Eretz Yisrael. And then they came back, and then they had 7 more days to Kriyas Yamsuf. He says also there's a remiss that's why we put tzitzis al kanfei bigdayim, on the wings, literally, of the garment, to remember the kanfei nisham that we went to Eretz Yisrael. These are the 2 pshatim that he says in a very, very, very difficult Rashi. Vayamusu ha'anoshim moitziei diba sa'oretz ra b'magefa lifnei Hashem. The Nesiim, the 10 of them, besides Yeshua and Kalev, they died, the ones that spoke bad about the land, they died in a plague. B'magefa. Here we're all living in a time of plague, lo yaleinu. They died from a plague. There's a chilling Gemara in Arachim. The Gemara in Arachim on Daf Tesvav says we should make a kal v'chaimer. If they died in a plague for just speaking about sticks and rocks, they just spoke about the land, then oy vavoy, how much more terrible it is when people speak about human beings. Now we have to know what here we are, we're still, as many are first coming out. Today, I'm doing this shir, Thursday night. Today was the first time in over 14 weeks that I walked into our local grocery store. 14 weeks I didn't walk into a store. I'm still going in with gloves and a mask. But it's the first time in 14 weeks. We're still acting. Mirz Hashem, this Monday I have a bris of an Einikel. My daughter Chani and my son Shlomo, they had a baby boy. Actually, my daughter Shver passed away. Dr. Feldman, all of Hashem, passed away in the COVID. He won't be by the bris. The first simcha. My wife and I had 2 other Einikel. We missed the simcha. So we're first beginning to come out with great trepidation. Eretz Yisrael is spiking. Other places are having what they call possible second wave. We know in the Spanish flu there was a second wave in the fall and then a third wave. So we do it. So we're very concerned. So we must know that there's a clear linkage between Lashon Hara and a Magef. I'll show you. First of all, you see over here that it says in the Nesiim that spoke Diba Ra, they died in a Magaifa. Right away you see, and they only spoke on sticks and stones. Imagine speaking about a relative, about a sister. Imagine speaking about a Rav, or a Shishiva, a Rebbe, a principal. It's frightening. But I want to show you the Lashon Hara Magaifa linkage. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, we again learned this in the Daf Yomi and Shabbos, that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shmayim, and the Malachim said, Tno hoidcha b'shamayim. Why don't you keep the Torah up here in heaven, Hashem? I mean, you had it 974 generations before the world was created, it was fine. Why give it to these humans? So Hashem said to Moshe to answer them, and he gave them an answer. He said, the Torah, the way it's written, you don't have the Torah, you have the Torah of Askaris, of the Rabbeinu Shalom. It's formulated differently, that's why there's no nekudas and no commas and periods, because you could rearrange the letters. So you have a Torah of Askaris Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but our Torah is Kabedes Avichim V'Esimecha. You don't have parents. Our Torah is Lo Yisirtzach. You're not going to murder. Our Torah is Lo Yisitz Hashem Hashem Alikecha B'Shav. You don't have businesses that you have to take oaths. Right? So So it says that the angels appreciated this explanation. And they all gave him presents. And it says in the Gemara, even the Malach HaMavis gave him a present. What did he give him? He showed him that Ketores stops a Mageifa. That's how Moshe Rabbeinu knew to quickly bring the Ketores to stop the Mageifa. Now we also learned that the Ketores in the Beis HaMikdash is mechaper on the sin of Lashon Hara. So there you see clearly the Ketores has to stop a Mageifa, and the Ketores is mechaper on Lashon Hara. We see that there's a connection between a Mageifa and a Lashon Hara. So a person, he wants to be careful, and he's still taking precaution, which he should, and he's still social distancing, and he's still washing his hands, and he's still not touching doorknobs, and not coming close to people. Very good. But we want to really be careful. We have to be careful. Once again, I first thank our host, TorahAnytime.com. I thank Chazak. I want to remind you again, I talk about dailygiving.org, but then at the end of the shir, people forget. So you finish the shir, you want to have a synthesis of Torah and Chesed. You want to have something that's not just a one-time thing, but every day to buy share in a world-class tzedakah. Like a lot of you don't know, there's an organization called Malabev that helps people with Alzheimer's and dementia. There's a project Inspire that helps at-risk teens. It's Partners in Torah, NCSY. You get a chance to give $1 to each of these world-class organizations like Oyel, right? Bonei Olam. So it's dailygiving.org. It's just $1 a day, but this way you link up and you create such a koyach over $1 million already. So join, Pruta, Mitzvah L'Chesed Gadol. I want to thank sponsoring Scott Andrew, and the Fence, the Schuler, and Ambush families. I want to remind everybody to please learn for Rav David Feinstein, Rav David Ben Rebbetzin Sima. Should have a refuah shalem and b'sech shachar Yisrael. I also want to invite you that if you would like to join my Zoom daf, it's every night Eastern Standard Time at 7:45. It's amazing Gemara now. You go to zoom.com, and my ID is 718-916-3100. Again, my ID is 718-916-3100. You go to zoom.com, 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15 minutes after 72 on Motzei Shabbos. We learn Tu Blat. We'd love to have you joining us on our Zoom family. Thank you very much for joining, and have a wonderful Shabbos.